So it seemed like everybody was enjoying the Criterion collection that I had, my Disney collection, my Spielberg collection, Tim Burton, and yeah, there's a couple other collections that I kind of have of different companies that make Blu-rays. So Criterion's probably the most well-known just because they've taken over all the art films and all the foreign stuff. But there's a couple other pretty popular ones. There's studios like Arrow, Umbrella. Umbrella is actually an Australian company from what I understand, and they do a lot of Ozploitation releases. Vinegar Syndrome, which has been popping up a lot lately for some really neat, obscure releases like Tammy and the T-Rex and Rad. But the big one that any person who collects Blu-rays or movies knows about is Shout Factory. Shout Factory has a lot of different labels. They also do Scream Factory, which is for their horror stuff, Shout Select, which is for some of their more premium grade movies, I guess. To be honest, I don't really know what's with all the different labels. I'm sure there's some difference with special features or with what comes with the movie or what kind of movie it is, but for the most part, anything that is by Shout Factory, the company, is on their website. It's always easy to find on one search bar, so if it's on Shout Factory, it's a Shout Factory release. End of story. I don't care about the labels. I don't have a giant collection of Shout Factory movies. I really just pick up the stuff that I really want to own myself, and some stuff to finish off other collections, because they've gotten the rights to a lot of specific movies and pretty popular series, or sometimes lesser known series that have gone to the wayside that people may have forgotten about, but movie fans have been dying to see in one collection for many years. Right, so right away we have the Bruce Lee film, The Big Boss, which was released in the States as Fist of Fury. In itself had a sequel, Fist of Fury, which had to be called The Chinese Connection in America. And you know what, I should just get out the Bruce Lee stuff. The Unfinished Game of Death and The Way of the Dragon. In the States, this was actually called Return of the Dragon because, you know, it was trying to cash in on the success of Enter the Dragon. And this movie, like Enter the Dragon, had been released after Bruce Lee's death, in the States anyway. Both versions of the movie show up on here. The one that was completely unfinished, and then there's the one that they tried to chop together, which includes some of the famous, very badly composited shots of like Bruce Lee's head being put on like a different person's body, or they like composited a towel around his neck. I don't know. It's wacky. Yeah, so these are pretty much the four most famous Bruce Lee films. The ones he starred in, besides Enter the Dragon, which was owned by Warner Brothers. So Shout Factory got their hands on all these movies. These actually recently went out of print because, as I found out later, Criterion Collection's actually releasing their own set very soon in July, which I also plan on getting. I am a big Bruce Lee fan, and you know, usually I don't try to double dip on movies, especially when they're owned by different companies. I own a lot of movies that have been released by Shout Factory. I own the original Blu-ray releases from their individual studios that made the movies, but I haven't gotten around to buying the Shout Factory version just because these are usually pricier sets, but there's some exceptions I'll make, and Bruce Lee's one of them. What's great about the Criterion set, it's going to have Enter the Dragon in it, which is not to, you know, I'm not trying to say these sets are bad. They're actually good. A lot of these special features will probably show up on the Criterion set anyway. But yeah, if you can get your hands on these ones or on the Criterion set, either or, Bruce Lee, man. Captain America here, which I actually did a review of this movie. This is the 1990 version, or sometimes called the 1992 version because it didn't get an official release until then, technically. And this is the Blu-ray release that they had with it, and it actually had some special features on there, which was pretty neat. This one's also out of print, I think as of this year, so try to get your hands on it if you can. Batman and Superman had come out, so clearly they could make a superhero movie in general, so why Marvel was having such a difficult time giving the rights to studios that actually had the means to make a good movie, I'm not really sure why. But Captain America was one of the first ones. It's one of the worst ones also. So I do have some Dracula movies here, which this one was released by Scream Factory, and this is Dracula Prince of Darkness, the third Dracula movie that Hammer made, if I remember correctly, but it's the second movie to have Christopher Lee in it, because Brides of Dracula didn't have Christopher Lee in it. And so there's this one, and this is probably the best set of all. It has the best group of different special features. It has this cool, because what's really cool about Shout Factory is that they have these like flip inserts where you can like flip what's going to be in the movie, what artwork you want for the cover, and usually the inside that they offer is usually the original poster art, so really cool. I also have the Scars of Dracula, which was released by Scream Factory, and I have The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, which isn't technically a Dracula movie. Dracula is in it. Van Helsing is played by Peter Cushing, but it doesn't have Christopher Lee, so like Brides of Dracula, it's considered part of the series, but also at the same time, you could skip it. Just watch the stuff with Christopher Lee, and some of the Christopher Lee movies you probably could skip too. Hammer, it was awful to get the rights to any of those movies. There's never going to be a complete set of all the Hammer stuff in the States anyway. In the UK they have it, but in the States, all these different companies always own the movies. But in the last couple of years, Shout Factory has been trying to get all the movies together again, which is really cool. They're re-releasing some of the stuff that was on that Universal Hammer horror set a couple years back, because Shout Factory must have a deal with Universal. They've been releasing a lot of Universal stuff lately. But they've also been releasing some of this other Hammer stuff that never showed up on any sets. They actually have every Dracula film out now. They almost have every Frankenstein movie out, or at least all of them have been announced, except for the first Frankenstein movie. We're still waiting on an announcement for that one. I don't know if it'll be Hammer or not. As far as Dracula goes, you can get his other movies from the Warner Archive, because Warner Brothers owns them. There was also a Volume 1 set of Hammer horror movies that was released by Warner Brothers, and I believe all those were released separately as well. There was never a Volume 2, it's just Volume 1. They had the audacity to call it Volume 1, like they were going to keep it going, but they didn't. The rest of them ended up being released on Warner Archive, at least the ones that Warner Brothers owns, and it's a big mess. But basically, Shout Factory has the rights to most of them at this point. It seems like they've had an exclusive deal with Hammer to round up all the rights, or at least Shout's been working with the different studios that own these. I mean, even on the back of this one, it just says Hammer, so it's not owned by any individual U.S. company anymore. And same here, I guess. Yeah. Well, this one actually says Studio Canal. Scars of Dracula does. So some other companies still own the rights to these, but they just weren't doing the work to release it on Blu-ray, and that's what Shout Factory's there for. It's basically to be like, look, bruh, you're not doing the work to get this movie on Blu-ray already, so give it to us. You'll make some money, we'll make some money, and everyone will be happy to finally have a Blu-ray of a movie that maybe no one's interested in, but it comes from a series and a company that is legendary. Escape from New York. I don't have Escape from LA, which has also been released on Shout Factory, but Kurt Russell, man. There's quite a few Kurt Russell movies on Shout Factory. Actually, a lot of John Carpenter films, too. I think every single John Carpenter film released in the 80s, besides Christine, has been released by Shout Factory. And honestly, I'd like to get them all. All these movies are actually owned by the same company, but for years there just wasn't good releases for a lot of them, because the only one people were interested in was the Cronenberg film. Not too many people were interested in the original Fly, so it was kind of hard to find that one, but especially the sequels. No one was interested in these at all. And then, I mean, a lot of people don't even know there was a sequel to the Cronenberg film. So Shout Factory finally put the work in to release a set that has every Fly film, which makes me real happy, because yeah, if you're gonna release a series of movies, try to get all the movies in, especially if you own them all, because sure, some of those movies aren't revered, but if you're doing that collection that has the movies, try to release them all. And if you're gonna do it in style like this. This is an awesome set. There's a lot of really good special features in these, so super happy. If you're a Fly fan, definitely seek that one out. Unlike The Fly, where it was all owned by one company, Halloween is owned by many different companies. Many different companies have taken up making different films in the series. It's been rebooted twice, and then actually there's a new film, so it's been rebooted 3 times. The point is, there's so many different Halloween movies, so many different continuities, and basically everyone's like, look, we know what the main Halloween series is. You know, even though it's a big mess, even though the movies go all over the place and they vary in quality, we want a set that has all of them together. And they did it. There's this version. This was actually the cheaper version. It just has the movies on it. There was a more expensive version that had 15 discs on it. One was like an exclusive special features disc. The other ones were some bonus discs for some of the individual movies. And it had the Halloween producer's cut for the 6th film, Curse of Michael Myers, which you could actually buy separately, so I did. It's not on my stack right now just because it wasn't a Shout Factory release. You got Miramax, the Weinstein Company, Universal, Stars is listed here, Anchor Bay is in here, because all these movies were not only Sony Pictures is listed. All these movies were owned by different companies, but also all these different companies, besides the studios, owned the rights to release the movies. So it was a big mess, but finally Shout Factory did the work. They got all the movies together in one giant set. I would have loved to have gotten the bigger set, but it was a limited edition set. It's expensive now. Super cool. Did all the artwork on the discs, which is something great that Shout Factory does. Really knows how to do a good cleanup job on the movies, but also to, you know, make the product worth it. You know, add some disc art, have some good artwork on the sets and everything. So yeah, this was the first time I ever seen all the Halloween movies. Oh, the Human Centipede, which I probably wouldn't own, but there was a Patreon request for it, so you can go see that review online. And you know, this set's actually nice. They have the color version of Human Centipede 2 on here. It's cool that they made such an impressive set for them regardless. So that tells you, Shout Factory will give its time and dedication to anything. The Last Unicorn, which was also a Patreon request, and you know, I wasn't in love with the movie, but it does have some really good artwork, and it's okay. I'd like to rewatch it in the future, just to get a better idea of it. That's what I mean. Like, Shout Factory really goes all over the place with their movies. There's some horror stuff. There's some foreign stuff. Sometimes they're just releasing straight up, you know, everyday Hollywood movies that just haven't been released in years, and then they do animation. A lot of 80s animation, actually. Phantom of the Opera with Robert Englund. I believe there's a Shout Factory version of Phantom of the Paradise also, which is the movie I'd really like to see. But it's fun. I like to kind of see the different versions of Phantom of the Opera. I've seen 2004 version, of course, but I've seen like the one that has Claude Rains in it, the color film, and the original one with Lon Chaney, which is probably my favorite version still, just because he was a really good fan, and it tells the story probably the most straightforward. So this was one of the first Shout Select movies that was released. It's the Pink Panther collection. The Pink Panther was the first one that came out, and then the next one was A Shot in the Dark. Okay, they did order these correctly. I'm just, my brain, because this series is a little confusing. They have 3 other movies in the original series, as you would call it, the ones that they made before Steve Martin, those ones were released by Columbia and MGM respectively. I own those ones as well, but Kino actually released 3 other Pink Panther movies, which, you know, even if I'm trying to remember the names of them, I own them, but I'm trying to like remember what they were exactly. One was called Inspector Clouseau. The other one was, I believe, Trail of the Pink Panther, and then Son of the Pink Panther. And Son of the Pink Panther doesn't have Peter Sellers in it, but all these movies have Peter Sellers, so that's why this set is the Peter Sellers collection. They got the rights to all the ones with Peter Sellers. However, if you go in the correct order of the releases, it goes the Pink Panther, which that one, Peter Sellers in it, not really about Inspector Clouseau. A Shot in the Dark, which was all about Inspector Clouseau. So they made a sequel to the Pink Panther, but they like took the character, but doesn't have anything to do with the Pink Panther. And then the other ones, which between A Shot in the Dark and Return of the Pink Panther, they made Inspector Clouseau, and they didn't bring back Peter Sellers. But then that's why this one's called Return of the Pink Panther. It's the 4th movie, and it had Peter Sellers. Then it was The Pink Panther Strikes Again, Revenge of Pink Panther, and Trail of Pink Panther. So I'm trying to remember what that other one I have then is. It must be whatever. I forget. There was another Pink Panther movie, and then there was Son of Pink Panther, and the third one, Inspector Clouseau, were all released by Kino. So they all came out around the same time. So you can get them all to complete the Pink Panther collection, but this set specifically has the Peter Sellers movies, which are the better ones. So these are the Poltergeist movies, and I haven't seen these in a couple years, but I think I remember the second one actually being pretty interesting. And then the third one I wasn't interested in at all. It was kind of lame, and it cut out a lot of the original cast. The second one actually brings a lot of people back, and it's very much a straightforward continuation of the first movie. So they released these sets through Shout Factory, which you could actually get these movies on Blu-ray before Shout Factory had them. MGM had released them, but I'd recommend these sets because they have the special features, which if you're going to be out buying the second and third Poltergeist movies, you might as well get the ones with the special features. Poltergeist is my favorite horror movie of all time, so I definitely have to complete the collection. Psycho 2, which I actually have to get to work on getting the rest of the Psycho movies. Universal owns the Psycho series, and they released a set that had the second, third, and fourth movie. Just those ones. I actually had the first movie included, but it doesn't have the special features for the second, third, and fourth movie, or from what I understand, it's not as extensive of special features that are included on the Shout Factory version. So I'm out getting the Shout Factory versions. So this is a double feature that's got The Fog and The Howling, which one of them is John Carpenter. I believe this is one of those sets where they have two movies, but there's not really much as far as special features goes. This is kind of the same as that Troll and Troll 2 set, which I also do have right here. I got this for a review of Troll 2, but this also doesn't really have too many special features. It's got some for Troll, but Troll 2, which is probably the more popular of the two Troll movies, doesn't really have any special features. It's got an audio commentary. That's really it. Honestly, I never agree with the fact that they'll try to put two movies on one disc. I think you should give time to each movie. Disney does this a lot too, but other companies, bigger companies, have been known to do it, and Shout Factory does it once in a while. But usually they're budget buys. Like, I think this one especially, I think I got this for like $5 at a store, not rebuying it. It wasn't a resale price. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, which this is another series where every company owns one of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre films. Man, I don't even know if I can go through exactly who owns what here. First movie was done by, I forget the company, but it was a real nice Blu-ray set. It had several discs to it, so it was awesome. Then there was a second movie done by Shout Factory, which this is a really good sequel, if not better than the original film. It's a way different film. It's definitely like Gremlins 2 versus Gremlins 1. I have the third Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is released by the Warner Archive, simply titled Leatherface. I'm trying to remember who owned the fourth one, because I think that might have also been Shout Factory. They made the remake and the sequel to the remake, which were just released by the companies that own them. And then there was Texas Chainsaw 3D, and then another movie called Leatherface, which was direct-to-video, I believe. So I own them all. There's been a bunch. I actually don't own the fourth one. That's why I can't figure out which company released it, but I still have to buy the fourth one, which we actually did a discussion of this on Cinema Swamp. And it's a great movie. Fantastic special effects, very ahead of their time. Kind of makes me wish that they would have continued with the practical stuff to see really how far they could have gone, even in today's age with computers and such. I think there could be way more done with practical effects. Transformers the movie, which itself has a cult following, which everyone to this day still they say it's the best Transformers movie. I really did like Bumblebee though, so I'll just throw that out there. And then if some of you have been watching my Monday movie pickups, you'd know that I've been picking up these Universal Horror Collection sets, which the first set had, these are all the Universal horror movies that weren't part of any monster series, and these are the ones that Universal hadn't felt like releasing yet, either because they're not popular enough, or there's probably not going to be enough traction around, something like Man-Made Monster. It's not really worth releasing it, even on DVD. But Shout Factory has been releasing these sets every couple months now. They actually have 6 of them out now, or there's a 6th one coming out in August. So I have the first 3. I'm going to continue buying them. It sucks that they are a bit pricey, but I think it's worth it at least because they're all great movies. Okay, why did I say that? They're all movies that I think are worth watching because I'm a big Universal horror fan. And I did watch all these movies on the first set. So this is basically all the movies with Karloff and Lugosi, and there's like a documentary extensively talking about their careers on this set. And then I have You'll Like My Mother, which is probably the most obscure movie I have on this list, but it goes to show the extensive collection of things that Shout Factory will release. Some are popular, some are stuff that just need a release. A lot of it's horror, a lot of it's foreign, sometimes animated, and then you got things like this that are very forgotten, but this one hits closer to home for me because this movie was actually filmed at Glensheen Mansion, which is a very popular landmark in my hometown. So that's why I got the movie, just because it's real cool to see a movie that was filmed in your area, especially when that's something that's very rare. I'll definitely be doing more of these in the future. I love just talking about some of the different movies I own, and sometimes I just start looking at these stacks and I'm like, wow, it has gone out of control. But, I'm sure I'll get more Shout collection sets in the future. And, hey, Criterion Collection Barnes & Noble sale should be starting soon. So, may my wallet cry. Thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks for watching the video, and special shout out to Anthony, Anna, Lukas, NolanCho, Ryan, and Robert for the support on Patreon. By joining my Patreon, you can get exclusive videos and blogs, and for only $7, you can request your own movie review. I hope you stick around, cinephile, and have a happy, productive day.